There it goes. There we go. Okay. Now we're good. And we're peeking. There we go. Now we're not peeking. Alright. Jeez Louise. Hi everybody. This is the week 3 lab. But it is the second lab, so it says lab 2. We are going to be going over basic gameplay this time. Again, this is from the Unity Create with Code pathway. This is all leading up to a Create with Code certification that you could take at the end of the class if you wanted. Some little points of housekeeping. In addition to your lab this week and the reading, which is chapters 8 and 9, we also have your design document due today, or not today, the end of this week. So that is just your initial ideas for your final project, which is the level in a video game. Again, we are not creating a whole video game. That would be absolutely bonkers nanners, but we're going to create a level. So start thinking about that. Whatever you put in the design document is not your final. I understand that it can grow and evolve, but this is just the first step in your scaffolding for it. Okay, so I have a cat here that is going to be a problem on purpose. Okay, I've got my canvas up here. It is the student view. So that little pink bar on the bottom, y'all won't see that. This is a little bit different this time. I am not going to be taking the screenshots. If you watched the first one, it's the same kind of deal. I will prompt you, verbally, when it would be time to take one, but I am not going to go through and actually take them. So the first thing I'm going to do is download the prototype 2 starter files. Okay. It is in my downloads folder. Move it over to your whatever folder you've got it saved into. Let's see here. So in mine, CIS 111, Create with Code, new folder, prototype 2, select. Actually, I'm going to add one in there, just in case. Okay. Cool beans. Hop back over here, close that out, and open up the lab. So, same thing that we were doing last time. I'm going to double window it. I do not have my hub going, so I should go ahead and probably do that. Helps if I can spell. Okay. Truly. Being a jerk. That cat. Okay. So, first thing we're going to do is open up the hub and create an empty prototype 2 project. Okay. It is going to be the same one that we are doing, or we did for the first one. It's going to be another 3D. So we're going to do Universal 3D. We're going to name it that. I've already created the file. Cool. Give me just a second. Hold on, guys. Alrighty, so I made a slight oopsie. So we're going to go in here to CIS 111, create with code. I'm actually going to do this. And then I can pop my files out into that one. Okay. And then I can create this here. There we go. Type 2. Okay. So create new local project, prototype 2. So this time we are going to use Unity Access Control, so Unity Version Control. So if you signed up for a student account, which hopefully you did, you get Unity Version Control for free. So outside of this, you normally have to pay for it, but this time you do not. Unity Version Control is great. It saves stuff to the cloud. Remember that the cloud is just another way to save somebody else's computer. So it is not saving on your local computer, but what that means is it is backed up more often, and so that you don't have to worry about your file suddenly disappearing, which has happened before. Okay, so we're going to create project. I've not actually used Unity Version Control, so this will be an interesting experience for us all. Alright. And while my cat was being a jerk, they knocked my drink off, so I will be super quick right back. Alrighty, there we go. Oof, I apologize. That had to be sonically awful, probably. Let's see. If you hear noise too, that's also my laptop fan. I'm going to see if I can get it down a little bit. That's probably about as good as I can get it. And again, we wait and wait and wait for the download to happen. If I remember next time, I'll do the point of order and housekeeping, whatever, when it's doing this, because that way it would be less like mind-numbing to wait. There it goes. Halfway done. Oh, thank goodness. Okay, so again, if the package manager shows up and is like, hey, some of your stuff's out of date, go ahead and follow the prompt for it. Okay, and then update. And then wait. The good news is I think that's the only one. Okay, and so since we're using version control, you can see down here in this window, there's a tab now for version control, and then it's got a list of changes. So, every once in a while when we save, we're also going to, like, check those in. Okay. Okay. Alright, so from the project window, extract the folder, and then import. So again, asset, import package, custom package. We go to our place where we put our files. And we open. And we hit import. Okay, if you have version control going, you're going to go over to project. So you have these two tabs here now. So, we are opening the prototype 2 scene. Okay, the issue with the shaders is happening again. So, for that, we went to project settings or preferences. Alright. There was a way that we fixed this. None. Confirm. Okay, so I went to project settings, graphics, default render pipeline, change that to none. And then okay. Quality, that was the other one. And then we changed them here. pipeline. None. Continue. Like the difference between the two is that the UDP render pipelines take significantly less render time, so they're a little bit less costful on your PC. So like technically better to use them, but we're using somebody else's files, so we need this to work. Okay. Render pipeline error fixed. Okay. We have changed our layout to our custom layout. Bam. And then in this time, this is when you take a screenshot. So take a screenshot. Okay. Next, we are going to get all of our animals. So, animals, scenes, all of our stuff set up, right? So the first thing we're going to do is look at our library, and we can do some things. We can look at our materials here. I'm going to bump this out too, right? Okay, so we've got different types of ground materials. So if we went there and we changed it to sand, it changes to that. Grass, kind of like the concrete. I'm going to stick with that. Okay, and then we're going to grab a human. I'm going to pick one, 3 animals and 1 food object. So I'm going to pick a banana and then animals. I'm going to do a beagle and a chicken and a doe. Okay. Cool. So I drag those out. Again, you can drag them out to the hierarchy. You can also drag them out into the scene directly. And then we gotta start renaming stuff. So this is a good practice to have. You want to name your stuff in a way that makes sense. So semantic naming is what is called. You'll learn about that a little bit more if you take the web dev class. So let's see here. We're going to rename the character player. Oh, did I drag out the food? Yeah, I did. Okay. I can't see it though. So there's the banana. There's the dog. And then there is the chicken. I'll zoom in so you can see them all. See? Chicken, dog. I guess that kind of looks like a deer. Banana. Okay, so the food scale, we're going to bump that up a little bit. There's a couple of ways you can bump stuff up. So, in our hierarchy, you can, in our inspector, you can bump up the scale this way, which is the way that I'm going to do it. However, I want to show you the other way as well. So in your scene view, there is this scale tool, in which case you can like grab and pull. I'm going to undo it because it drives me bonkers. I'm also going to like reset the Z position because I feel like it's like stuck in the ground a little bit. No, it's not. Okay. Cool. So I'm going to click this little link because that is going to make it scale proportionally by all 3. I'm going to bump it up by like maybe not 5. 5 is a little big. Let's not do 5. Let's do 2. 2 makes sense. And then it is in the ground. There we go. Okay. Okay. this is the time when you should take another screenshot. Okay. So we changed the material, we dragged out the thing, named the character player, adjusted the food, and then screenshot. Okay. So, in this one, like, you're avoiding animals and capturing food. Pretty simple gameplay, right? So we need to be able to move the player left and right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse some of my files. There we go. Okay, so I need to create a new folder. So I've right-clicked where it says Assets, and then I'm going to go to Create, and then Folder. I'm going to name it Scripts. And then within that, I'm going to do Create Scripting, and we're going to do a monobehavior script. And we're going to name it Player Controller. These are pretty common naming conventions. What is going in the player controller script, everything you would use to control the player. We are going to then open up the script. You can do that just by double clicking. Gonna drag it over here to the other window. So we've got our Unity. The using statements are what all libraries it's using, so what other like external scripts it is pulling in for it. It is creating our public class. We have our start, which is called once before the first like update is called, and then update is called once per frame. So when you set up a project, you set how many like frames happen. Like if you think of animation, it's like 24 frames a second. Okay, so at the top of it, we are going to declare a new float. So it does not need to be in our start or our update. Okay. So we are going to, it is a public, so public float. We're going to call it horizontal input. And we're going to semicolon in there. We are not going to set it to anything. Okay. And then in the update, which is again called once per frame, we're going to do horizontal input. And I'm just hitting tab to get it to autofill it. And then we're going to set that to input dot get access open parentheses, and it's horizontal input, so we want to get the horizontal access. If you remember from our first one, you can go into the settings and change what your like accesses are, like the inputs for them. Okay, so we're gonna save. The biggest thing to look out for is our like any sort of red lines. So like if I add this at the end, you see the little red line squigglies underneath. You don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to save. Close that down. It is going to recompile. Okay, and then if we hit play, we should be able to use our A and D keys or our left and right arrow keys to move our player. So let's... You know what we didn't do? Yeah, I skipped number 2. Cool. I've got to slow down. Okay, attach it to the player. If you do not attach the script to whatever you're wanting the script to affect, it won't ever work. Okay. Alright, we are getting an error, and for the life of me, I cannot read it because of that terrible color. Host type is not matching any asset type. Cool, that's a new one. That should have changed it. Activating the build-in. Alright, so I'm going to hit stop. We're going to go to the project settings. Okay. PC. Rendering. Render pipeline. None. Mobile. Rendering. Render pipeline. None. Okay. Okay. Graphics. And then we go down to scriptable. Okay. We gotta change the input classes. Something. Just look it up. Just look it up. Or was it there? Yep. Okay. Player settings. Input handling. There it is. Both. Apply. Okay. It's gonna restart. While it's doing that. a note. And we need to go to okay, now we should be able to do both. Okay, it's still erroring. Okay. So we are going to take note of this. I'll open up a file here. Okay. So we're going to do some fun stuff here. So I'm going to save. Now would be a good time to where is access control? There it is. Okay. I'm going to check everything in really quick. Good God. So add a comment, check it in. It's going to upload everything. This is just in case I mess something up. Okay, I've done that. I have saved. I am closing that out. We're going to go to our file here. And then we are going to go to packages, manifests, open. Okay, and the one that is messing up here is probe volume rendering layer mask tracer. Okay, so take out this one. Unity render pipelines universal. I just want to make sure that's it. When VR video vehicles on screenshot physics. Because we're not using the universal pipeline. Okay, and then we're going to save it. And then we're going to reopen our project and see if that fixes it. Okay. So it's going to recompile. The reference script on this viewer is missing. I'm just going to turn that off. What if this thing is broken? Now the thing is that our little dude right here is still not working, so let's check our player here. He's got the script on it, player controller. Okay, update is called 1 per frame, that's horizontal input, get access, horizontal. Okay. That should work. It shouldn't. That's fine. It doesn't actually change the positionality. It's getting it, but it's not changing it. Okay. So, take a screenshot of your script here. I will update this to update the instructions about opening up the manifest file. Okay, cool. Okay, so we are going to create a new public float for the speed at which we move our player left and right. Helps if I can spell. Okay, and we're going to set it to 10.0f. Don't forget your semicolon. In your update, we're going to transform.translate. Okay, and then we are going to do it by a vector 3 because we are moving x, y, and z. Dot right times our horizontal input. Okay, times time delta time. Okay, times speed. And what that does is it performs a calculation of affecting your right, so your left and right axis. So you're setting it, the vector 3, like your x-axis, I believe, to your horizontal input, moving it left and right. Time delta time is at that exact moment, and then at the speed. So we're going to save that. And now we're going to go over and try moving it. Alright. Okay. So it's really hard to see on mine because I have it like, you know what? Let's do this. Because even I can't see it. Alright. Played mode tent here. we're gonna bump that tent way down. Because I don't know about y'all, but I could not see it. Okay. I did it the wrong direction. And that's the wrong thing. I'm actually just going to reset that to default. Okay. Okay, so you'll notice that the speed is set at 10, the horizontal input is 0, but you can see when I'm pressing left and right, it is moving it left and right, okay? So we are good there. Hop back over to your script, take a screenshot. Okay. Now, I didn't do it on here, but there is a potentiality, the way that this is right now, to if your player, your user, presses left or right too far, your player character will just fall off the screen. So we got to stop that. So we are going to check and see if, like every time we do the update with the input and everything, we're going to check and see if the player is within bounds, right? So we're going to create something that's called an if statement. You have if else's, and you can just have ifs. So if is, if this thing is true, do this thing. If else is, if this thing is true, do this thing, or else, like if it's not true, do this other thing. So in this case, we just need an if. We just got to check, right? So we are going to check if the transform position dot position on the x-axis is less than -10. Then do this thing. And the way that you tell it to do then is opening and closing curly braces. So we're going to do transform dot position. And we're going to set that to a new vector 3. And we're going to set it to -10 for your x. Sorry, so we're setting if it's less than -10. So that's like the bounds, right? And then whatever the position it currently is of y. And then same thing for z. So transform z. And then end it with a semicolon, right? Okay. Alright. So we're going to save that. Take a screenshot. Hop over here. It's going to recompile our script. Going to hit play. I'm going to zoom out a little on my top area. Okay. Okay, so you can see on the left side it works, on the right side it does not, right? Okay, so let's fix that too. So I've hit stop. I'm going back over to my script. Baby bean. Cats never want to bother me, and then trying to do this, and they do. Okay, so here's what we're going to do instead of doing the same kind of thing. We're going to change it to a range, right? So in this case, it's set to a set value of, like, if it's less than 10, we're going to set it to a range instead. So we're going to set a new float. So we're going to do public float. Boy. There you go. And we're going to name it X range. So lowercase x and then range. And we're going to set it to 10. So that is going to be 10 on either side, right? Okay. So anywhere where it says -10, we are going to change that to X range. Okay. So X range. Okay, and X range. Now, here's the dealio. That works if it's less than, right? But what if it's greater than? So we got to do that too. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to highlight and Control C or Command C and Control V or Command V. And we're going to switch that around. So now we have a less than and then a greater than. And then everything else is the same. Okay. Take a screenshot. Save. Sorry if you just heard that. I just bumped the mic with my hand. Where's my dealie? Hello? Hello? Friend? There it goes. Okay, it was compiling the script. Okay. So now if we do it, we're gonna mess it up. Alright, public float X range equals 10. In the update, we've got the transform position is less than X range. Then we set it to a new vector 3 of X range, and then that, and then the close, and then if it is greater than X range, then it's the same thing. Forgot a negative sign. Negative X range. Negative X range. Okay, recompile. Because it was setting it to 10 each time. So like, if it was never greater than or equal to 10, like, it needed some wiggle room. So, negative X range. Okay? Alright. So next, we are going to make it so that our projectiles come towards us, right? So what we're going to do sorry, the projectiles go away from the player. So we're going to create a new script. I'm actually going to go down and do it the different way. New script. And we're going to name it Move Forward. I'm going to hit create and add. Okay. And then we're going to create our speed variable. You'll notice that we use a lot of these variables over and over. So public float speed. And then this time we are going to set it to 40.0f. Okay. And then in the update, so once per frame, we're going to set it to transform.translate. And we're going to do vector 3 forward, which means move it in the forward direction, times time.delta time times speed. Close our parentheses and close out our thing. Okay. So, this time you're not going to upload a screenshot of your script. You're going to upload a screenshot of your editor window with the food object selected. Okay? So this window here. And then we can watch it like shoot off, right? Well, bam. Banana go by. Okay. Now, in our assets, we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it prefabs. So prefabs are neat little, like, think of them as like Lego pieces that you can create over and over and over and over. So, and then we're going to take our food object here, our food banana, and we are going to drag it into the prefabs folder. Now, if you spelled it right, you should get this, and you want to create an original prefab. Okay. Now, in our player controller script, so player controller, we are going to create a new public game object where we're going to store that prefab. So we're going to do game object, and we're going to name it projectile prefab. Okay, just like that. Going to save. Let it compile. Now, if we go down to our player, you'll see down here at the very bottom it says projectile prefab. So now we can grab our banana and just kind of drag it there. Okay. So the way that you can test this as well is you can drag one of the bananas out at like screen time, like while it's playing, and watch it go. Okay, so in this case, I want to see a screenshot of your hierarchy. What it does not say to do in here, and I'll have to make sure it does, it's like once you have that prefab done, you don't need to keep it down here anymore. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of it. Okay, so then we're going to hop back over to our player controller script. So now we're going to make it so that when the player presses the space bar, that it shoots out the banana. So the way that we do that is we check and see if the space key is being pressed, right? So we do if, and then the way we check is if the input get key down, and we are going to do key code dot space, and that just tells it to look for the space key. And then for this one, I want you to type in a comment of launch a projectile from the player. Okay? Sorry, it's late. Okay. And then take a screenshot here. Next, we've created code that says, hey, check and see if the player is pressing down the space bar. We don't do anything with it, right? So we need to change it so that the projectile actually spawns. So the way that we do that is called instantiation. We are instantiating an object. So we are creating an instance of an object. Okay, so we do that with instantiate. And then we are going to do the projectile prefab that we created. And then the player's position. Okay. And then we are going to transform its rotation. So transform rotation. And then end it with a semicolon because you gotta. Okay. Okay. So take a screenshot of this. Let's do a little testy test. Okay. It goes really, really fast, but like all the bananas. Okay. It has been a while. Save. Okay. Okay. So we need to do the same kind of thing, but with the animals. So we need to take all of them, and on the y-axis we need to rotate them 180 degrees so that they are facing towards the player. And then we're going to do, so the way I did that was just in the transform 180. Hold down shift click to select more than one. So click the dog or whatever animal you chose, shift, and then click the last one, and it should highlight them all. So we need to add a component, and we're going to add on, actually I'm just going to do it this way. Just add on the move forward script. So just click and drag it over. Okay. So in this case, I feel like the speed is going to be a little bit too much, right? So I'm gonna test it for like 10, and also I'm gonna move. I didn't have everybody selected. Are you 40? Yeah, of course. and 10. Okay. I'm also going to move everybody kind of forward so we can see what's going on. Okay. So let's see how that goes. That feels pretty reasonable. So, pardon me. We need to go ahead and drag them down into the prefabs. And we're creating another original prefab. Okay. And then you can go ahead and get rid of these. And we're going to test it by dragging one out while the play is going. So you can see it go off into the wild blue yonder. So save. And then I want you to take a screenshot of your prefabs folder and put that in there. Okay? So screenshot, prefab folder. Apologize. Okay. So, if you noticed, once a prefab spawns, it just goes off forever, right? So we need to get rid of it once it's done. Otherwise, you're going to have however many objects created, and buddy, that is going to kill your memory. So we're going to create a new script, and we're going to, for now, I'm just going to, okay. We're going to add a new script, and we're going to call it destroy out of bounds. Like, same thing as when naming your, like, variables. Naming your scripts in a way that makes sense so that you can see what you're doing is a really good practice. Because if you have, like, 50 scripts and they're all just, like, script A, script B, you're not going to be able to tell what they're doing. So, like, don't do that. Okay, so, let's... Within the start of the curly braces, but before the start, we are going to add a new variable. It is going to be a private float, so it's private float, and it is called top bound. And we're going to set it to 30 to start. Okay? And then we're going to check in our update and see where it is. And if it's past the top bound, we're going to destroy it. So the way that you do that is you do if, and we do if. In this case, we are checking the transform position of the Z. And in this case, it's really close in the autofill, but not quite. So it's greater than top bound. But we can go ahead and let it fill in the rest of that. And then our curly braces, curly brackets. And the way you destroy something is super easy. Destroy. Destroy. And then game object. And that tells it to destroy itself. Okay. Now, if you had your stuff still out here, and you did it this way, and the overrides, you could tell it to apply to all. So I'm actually going to do that with the other ones. Just for funsies. Okay. Now, I want you to test it. Pardon moi. And then man, those bananas go so fast I can't even like tell when they're leaving the area. That's bonkers. Okay. Cool. And then save, because it's been a while since we saved. Get in the practice of saving often. Okay. And then in your script, take a screenshot. Put it there. Okay. So, we want to do the same thing with our animals, because if we're destroying the projectiles, we don't want like a mountain of critters getting spawned, right? So we're gonna do kind of the same thing. In our script here. So we're going to go ahead and create a lower bound. So private float lower bound. And we're going to set that to -10. Now, why are we choosing these values? It's basically figuring out from the like 0, 0 what the like coordinates are for like the Z for the start and the end. That's all it is. So from 0, 0 it goes forward 30 and then backwards 10 or yeah. Okay. And then what we're gonna do is we have it already checking here if it goes past the top bound. Now we're going to add an else statement. So an else if. So else if. So you can do an else and that will capture everything other than the if. If you do an else if, it's like if this, well no, but if this, then yes. And then everything else, meh. So we're going to do transform. Dot position dot z, and we want to check if it is smaller than the lower bound, because like if it's higher than the higher bound, that means it's gone off that way, and if it's lower than the lower bound, that means it's gone off the other way. So helps if I hit the right button. Oh, and then braces. And then same thing. So I'm just copy and pasting destroy game object. So you don't have to really worry about like the indentation because the white space doesn't really matter, but it drives me bonkers if the white space does not matter. Or if the white space does not like line up, because that's a really easy way to get lost in your code, right? Okay, so I'm going to then save. And then what we need to do is we need to add that script to all of our animals, right? So we're going to drag it. Drag it. Ugh. Now, this is the area where it's like apply it to all. So I've dragged it out since it's not the original prefab. It's in like an instance of the prefab. We're gonna have to apply it to all. Same thing. So I'm gonna grab these last two, destroy out of bounds, apply to all. Destroy out of bounds. Apply to all. So now all of them should have that. And then take a screenshot of your updated script. Send that there. Okay. So, it is also best practice when creating something like this to create something that is going to manage your spawns. So, we are going to do something called create an empty. So, create empty, and we're going to name that spawn manager. And then within the spawn manager, we're going to add a script. And we're going to name it, guess what? Spawn manager. Okay. Let it think. Save. And then open up your script. So, in that, we are going to create a new public game object. So public game object. We are going to call them, oh, sorry, we want to make it an array. So game object, and then, so those little square brackets instead of the curly ones just means that it's an array, which is kind of like a list of things, but not really. It's just a collection of things, right? And we're going to name it Animal Prefabs. Okay. So, I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hop back over here. Now it should have Animal Prefabs here, right? So, we want to, what the heck just happened? Okay. Oh, golly. What has happened here? Okay. I don't know why it's acting this way, but if it does that to you, just go to the three dots and do properties. Because that's going to give you access to that game object. Then you set the size there to 3, and then you're going to drag your prefabs in. Okay. Okay. and then take a screenshot of your editor and put it in. Okay, so we're gonna do a thing and then we're gonna change it. Okay, so save, and then we're gonna hop back over to our Spawn Manager script. So we're going to manually spawn things to make sure it works, and then we will change it to an automatic, like, time spawn. So first thing we're going to do is create a public int. So that's an integer, and we're going to name it animal index. And that is going to, we're going to set it to, like, the index or the location of a certain animal in the array, right? So in our update, we're going to do if, and we're going to do input, get key down, and then we're going to do the key code dot s. So if you hit the S key, we're going to instantiate, so and create an object. We're going to choose one of the animal prefabs at the index, so animal index. And then we're going to set its location. So new vector 3 of 0 for x, 0 for y, and 20 for z. That gets it down a little bit. And then we're going to cause it to rotate. So animal prefabs dot, nope, sorry, square brackets, animal index, and then dot transform dot rotation. Okay, and then save it, take a screenshot of your script, and then I'm going to show you how this works. So I'm going to scooch back over. Okay. Okay, it stopped being stupid. Good. Alright, so I'm going to hit play, and then I'm going to hit the S key. So we're going to set our animal index to 1, and we're going to hit S. Got an error. Object's reference not set to an object. Love it. Okay, that's fine. Let's see where we oopsied. Okay, so we've got the animal prefabs. It's an array. We've got a public int called animal index. In our update, we are checking if our input is the S key. Thank you, dear. And then if it is, we are instantiating a new animal prefab at the index. New vector 3 of that. And then, so what is it saying not set to an object, an instance? Hi, bud. don't see anything wrong. Let's see if that was just a glitch. Index is out of bounds of the array. So, like, that's crazy because the index is 0. Yeah. Okay. Object not set to. Huh. Alright, let's skip it for now and then come back. Because we're about to undo it anyways. I have a feeling this might be due to the whole, like, key code thing. Okay, so we're going to get rid of the int there. In our update, we're going to check for the input, and we're going to set an int of headable index. And we're going to set it to random.range, and then the range is going to be random.range. Jeez. 0. And then we want it to be the length of, like, how many are in the array we have. So, how many are in the list? So, animal. Prefabs dot length. Okay. Just want to make sure I still did that right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Let's see if it works now. I'm wondering if it was just because of the weird indexy thing. Okay. So it was just a weird indexy thing. So that's fine. So make sure you put a screenshot of your updated script in. And so, like, we have it spawning if we hit the key, but we want it to spawn randomly. So what we're going to do is and in like different positions, right? So we're going to create a new private float called spawn X, or spawn range X, and set it to 20, and then a private float of spawn pause, so spawn position Z, and set that to 20. And then in here, we're going to add some new. So we're going to, nope, there's not an extra. Okay, I thought there was an extra. So the first thing we're going to do is add some code. So we're going to say randomly generate animal index and spawn position. And we're going to do a vector 3 of spawn position. And we're going to set it to a new vector 3. Of random dot range of negative spawn range X. So sometimes the autocorrect wants to fill in stupid shit. Stupid stuff. Nobody heard that. Spawn. We're all adults here, right? X. And then we need it to, golly, okay, comma. So that's going to be your X coordinates, 0 for your Y, and then your spawn position Z for your Z, and then close parentheses and semicolon. So if you have Claude integrated in there or some other generative AI helper, it's fine if you want to use it for this class. However, the reason that it added in that stuff that was like blatantly incorrect is because it's not actually figuring out what is going to work in your code. It is seeing what's already there and choosing the next most probable thing. So that's why it said spawn range X and then spawn range Y, because that's the next most probable. We're not doing that. So you've got to be very, very careful if you're using one of those. Okay, so we're keeping the animal index the same because that's setting it to a random index. And then we want to instantiate it, but instead of instantiating at this new vector position that's like always going to be 0, 0, 20, we want to do it at the spawn position instead. Okay? And then everything else is the same. So save, send me a screenshot of that. And then we're going to check. Get out of my ramen. So, I'm going to do some cleanup here because this is going to drive me bonkers. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to fix our camera a little bit. Object not set. Oh, so it's doing that stupidity again. I wonder if I have a typo. I'll check in a sec. Alright, private float, spawn range X. Yep, 20. Spawn range, spawn position Z, 20. Key down, yep. Vector 3 position, random range from negative 20 to 20, 0, and then 20 basically. And then random range, well, not and that, and that, and that. Okay, so it's fine. So we'll come back to it. Okay, so next we're going to move on to our camera. So, we're going to toggle between perspective and isometric view. Oops, sorry, that's wireframe draw around. I don't want that. I have somehow turned on the wireframe and I don't. Remember how to turn it back on. I don't need 2D. What have I done? Oh. Good golly, there it is. Okay, fun stuff. Alright. So, we're going to select our camera here. And we're going to change our projection from perspective to orthographic. So, like, that's the difference between, like, an isometric view and in a perspective view. Kind of like a difference between, like, a top-down and, like, an isometric. Okay. So, screenshot with your camera selected. And then we're going to make our changes to our spawn. Oh, save, of course. Okay, so we're going to make our changes to our spawn. So, we're going to create a new function, because this needs to be in a function instead of just hanging around in the update, right? So we're going to go down here after the ending brace for update, but before the final one. And we're going to do a void, and we're going to call it spawn random animal. And we add the open and close parentheses, and then open close braces. And then we are going to cut and paste everything within the hit the key code if statement. So not the ending brace down there, but instead we're going to say spawn random animal. So what that's doing is functionally the same thing. When we're hitting the S key, we're saying to do the same thing. Okay. So take a new screenshot of that and then put that in. And so now we need to spawn them on a timer instead of when you hit the S key, right? So we are going to add a couple of new things. Stop with the freaking adding. We're going to add a private float of a start delay. We're going to set that to 2. Not 23, 2. And then we're going to add a private float of a spawn interval. Spawn interval. We're going to set it to 1.5f. Okay? So, then we're going to take out of the update this if statement. And then we're going to add into our start invoke repeating. So that means make it happen over and over and over. And we're going to invoke spawn random animal. So that is the name of our thing down here. I would highly recommend just cutting and pasting it. And then start delay. And then spawn interval. And then close it up. And then... So that's telling it to, after 2 seconds, or 2 frames, do spawn animal, and then do it every 1.5 frames. Okay? So, save it. And then let's test it. Did I? Cool. So in the instructions, I have it as X spawn range, and in mine, I put it as like X range spawn. Either way is fine. Just as long as you're consistent. Okay, let's see if we get any errors, shall we? No, we're not. And the animals are spawning and they're going away. Cool. So, let's talk colliders. So colliders are things that give our, not mass, but give them like a skin, right? So like, once you spawn, or once you like have an animal, you want to be able to have your like food items hit it and have it affect it. So to do that, we need to be able to tell when the two things touch. And to do that, we need a collider. So we are going to click on one of our animal prefabs. So I'm going to close my console here. I'm going to click on one of my animal prefabs, and then I am going to go to add component, and we're going to start typing in COL. And we're going to name, or grab a box collider. Okay. I'm just going to drag one out. Okay. So, box collider, not super great, right? So we need to edit. So to do that, we hit edit collider down there. And then we're just going to drag it kind of out and then around our dude here. Nope, 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 nope. So we want to keep that. Yep. And I'm just dragging around sliders so that I can see kind of from all sides that it's covered. I'm gonna go a little bit bigger than you would think on this, simply because it's a very small chicken. And you want your users, your players, to be able to actually hit the chicken, right? That's what I was worried about. probably be over the chicken. Okay. You just gotta fiddle. We're gonna be going over pill colliders and like other colliders later, and it's gonna make it much easier. Okay, okay. And then we also want to make sure is trigger is done. And then overrides apply to all. And then we got to do the same thing with our other ones, right? Okay, so we're going to do box collider. Ooh, big collider. Cheesy Pete. So that's a little bit big. So let's try taking it by 0.5. That's still a little bit big, but at least it's like manageable. Why? This trigger. There we go. Okay. And then finally with our dog. Same thing. Big giant collider. Just gotta scooch it. You can actually leave it tall too if they're short, if you want them to like be able to actually hit the thing. So like it might be a little bit better to do that for the chicken. And then again, do the apply to all. Apply to all. And apply to all. Okay. And then, oh, shoot, make sure the is trigger is set to. I didn't do this yet. Is trigger. Okay. Apply to all. Okay, and then for the Bonena, we are going to add a rigid body. So a rigid body. And then we are going to do uncheck use gravity. And then we're also going to add a collider. Box collider. Carbonanas. Our collider is actually pretty good on that one. Okay. Wait, do it down a little. There we go. Okay. And then make sure to do your override, apply to all. Okay, so let's make sure we did everything. Box collider, yes. Is trigger. Ahaha. That's why we check. Apply to all. Is trigger. Apply to all. Okay. Is trigger. Is trigger. Is trigger. Okay. So take a screenshot of one of your prefabs in your inspector so that I can see that it's okay. And now we need to have something to do to check if something is hitting something else, right? So we are going to add a new script. So create scripting monobehavior script. We're going to name detect collisions. And then we're going to drag it onto all of them. Yeah, I was worried that I wouldn't do that. Okay. Oh, sorry, we weren't supposed to add it to the banana. So I'll go ahead and just do remove component there. Okay. And then we're going to open up a script. And then we're going to, after the update but before the ending one, we're going to do void. And then on trigger enter. And that means when there's a trigger happening, when it collides with something else, we're just going to do destroy. No. And then game object. So that is telling it to destroy itself. And then destroy other dot game object. So that is saying destroy the thing itself and then the thing it collided with. Okay? Alright, so hit save. And then we're going to test. So I'm going to hit play. I forgot the button. Oh man, I am super bad at this. Ugh. Huh. Okay, so there are some obvious flaws here. Yeah, it's hard to hit them. We know kind of inherently that this is not the thing that we want to do. So, like, first off, I want to make sure that that has the on trigger. Yep, is trigger on gravity. So when you're doing this, I would suggest using bigger animals and bigger foods maybe, yeah? Okay, but for now, it should work. I do want to check. So we have our player controller. He can go 10 and 10. I'm noticing some animals get by him. Kitty. So we're going to do 20 and 20. Okay, that is still not enough. And our animals are still not being hit. So let's check our player here. So some things I'm doing is I'm just checking I'm just making some alterations in terms of like where the camera is so that we can see more stuff, so that your player has more time to like actually try to hit stuff. Oh, I moved him to the wrong side. My bad. My bad. Alright. Let's try it there. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my prefabs out here. Okay. Let's do one last thing. Let's change the range that the spawns can happen in. So, let's try this as 10. Z, we want Z because we want them to start pretty far back. Okay, see, that should have hit him. Okay, so let's check our player again. They're on the ground. And then we're going to do this. Just for my own easiness. You're fine. Move forward. I got the destroy. Got the ES trigger. Let's see about the collider here. Let's see now. Ah, beans. So the destroy is not happening. Box collider. I've done that. Done that. The banana's got the rigid body on it. Let's look at the collider on it. Alright, every angle is covered at this point. You don't have the detect condition. Ah ha ha ha, I found you. Okay. Alright guys, I will have to check in on this because there's no reason why the detect collisions shouldn't work. On trigger enter. Yeah. Because we set the one thing as a trigger and we set the other thing as a collider. So when they collide, it should work. Let's do a little debugging here. Okay, so these, when they start, should have the collision happen. We should be able to see them disappear. Down in the bottom right corner. Left corner. Okay. Okay. Okay, well, whatever. That works now. For whatever reason, I don't know why. We do need to up our player speed a little bit because those things were getting by me pretty heftily. And then I want to make the camera... We'll love our... Okay, so the last thing we need to do is we need some sort of mechanism to tell when the game is over. So when an animal gets past the lower bounds, right, or the lower bounds. So if it gets past the player, we need to let somebody know, right? So usually what you would do is you would actually have like a pop-up, or it would end the scene, or you would go to a next scene that's like a game over scene. But in this case, we're just going to add it to our destroy out of bounds script. So the last thing we're going to do is go to it, and then go to our destroy game object. And then in the last if else, right before the destroy game object, we're going to add in a debug log. And what that means is down in the little inspector down there is going to say something. And we want it to say game over with an exclamation point. And then we want a semicolon there. And then we save. And then we can bring up our debugger here. Hello. Where's my error window? Okay, and then we can click on this and watch it happen. See? Game over. So the last thing I need you to do is add in some comments into your scripting. So like in here you can say, you know, checks if off top of screen. And then down here we can add in a checks if off bottom of screen. That sort of thing. It's just getting like practice of commenting your code, because you're not necessarily going to be the only one that looks at it, and it just helps kind of figure out what is going on in there. And then make sure to save, and then the last thing you want to do after this is all done is in your version control here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a comment of final version, and we're going to check it in and hit save. There we go. So in our version control, you can see this is our whole project. So if something happened to our computer, we could grab this from the version control and pull it in. So it's really nice for if something happens to like your local environment. Alright, so that is it for this. This one was a doozy. So I hope you all took lots of breaks and fast forwarded through some of the parts, hopefully. I will go back in and at some point edit these down. But for now, have a great rest of your weekend. Bye.